My beloved, there came a season in my life when fear tried to make a home in my chest, when every knock at the door sounded like bad news and every tomorrow looked like a threat. In that trembling place, I found an old song, whispered on the fragile pages of Scripture. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? And I tell you today, as one who has walked through shadows, this psalm is not a pretty verse to frame on a wall. It is a lamp for the hallway of your mind, a shield for your frightened heart, a steady hand on your back when the world tries to push you down. If you let it, Psalm 27 will teach you to stand up straight in the storm, to look trouble in the eye, and to remember that you are never walking alone. I have learned that when the psalm declares, "The Lord is my light," it is not speaking of a soft candle in a peaceful room. It is a searchlight in a battlefield night. It is not the gentle glow you use to read a fairy tale. It is the fierce, unashamed beam that exposes the hiding places of fear and shows you the path when your knees are knocking and your heart is whispering, "Turn back." I know something about walking through corridors of confusion, where every door seems to lead to more questions, and every step echoes with doubt. In those moments, my own wisdom was too dim, my own strength too small, my own plans like matches in a hurricane. Yet when I allowed that holy light to shine, when I dared to say with trembling lips, "The Lord is my light," I found that the darkness did not disappear all at once, but it began to lose its confidence. It backed away slowly, like a bully who realizes that the child he mocked is standing beside a mighty father. Light, you see, does not argue with the dark. It simply arrives, and the dark must rearrange itself. There were nights when the storm outside my window was nothing compared to the storm inside my mind, when memories I wanted to forget marched in like uninvited soldiers, when shame wrapped itself around my shoulders like a heavy cloak. In those nights, I did not need pretty words. I needed a piercing, guiding presence. This psalm offered me just that. I began to understand that when God calls himself light, he is not promising me a life without shadows. He is promising me a companion who walks with me through them. That light goes into the corners where I have hidden my fears, where I have stored my secret questions, my buried disappointments, my quiet anger, and it does not condemn me for having them. No, it invites me to see them clearly. It teaches me that what grows in the dark shrinks in the light, that what once seemed unbeatable is manageable when name-faced and bathed in truth. This is why the enemy of your soul loves confusion, loves secrecy, loves unchecked thoughts that run wild in the night. But the moment you let Psalm 27 sit on your tongue and in your spirit, the moment you whisper, "The Lord is my light," you are turning on something that confusion cannot control. I discovered that this light does more than guide. It reveals. It reveals who God is, yes, but it also reveals who I am when I stand next to him. Under that light, I saw that I was not the sum total of my mistakes, nor the echo of cruel words spoken over me in anger or ignorance. Under that light, I saw a soul crafted with intention, a life that was not an accident, a journey that still mattered even when I felt broken. And so, slowly, my steps became less hesitant. I began to walk as if I had a right to the road I was on. I began to speak as if my voice had value. Not because the world had suddenly become kind, but because the light had shown me that I belonged to someone greater than the world. When you let that same light enter your life, you will find it shining, not only on your path, but in your decisions, in your relationships, in your quiet moments. You will begin to ask, Lord, show me what is true here. And you will notice that what once felt confusing begins to separate. Truth from lie, peace from chaos, love from manipulation. So, my dear heart, do not despise the darkness that makes you reach for the light. Do not curse the night that drives you to the psalm. Instead, in that trembling hush, dare to say with the psalmist, even with your voice shaking, "The Lord is my light and my salvation." Let that declaration stand taller than your fear. Let it be the sentence that rises above the noise in your mind. And as you whisper it again and again, you will find that you are not begging for a distant glow. You are welcoming a faithful presence. And in that presence, you will discover that even in your deepest valley, even on your most uncertain road, you are being led, not lost. When the psalm asks, "Whom shall I fear?" it is not because there are no enemies, but because fear no longer has the authority to rule your decisions. I know what it is to feel hunted by memories, by failures, by voices that said, "You are not enough." Yet Psalm 27 invites you to stand in the middle of your threats and answer with courage born from trust. You may surround me, but you cannot define me. This key point calls you to live not as a victim of every shadow, but as a soul guarded by a God who will not abandon his own. Fear is a cruel master. My dear, it does not need chains on your wrists if it can chain your imagination. It will show you scenes that have not happened, paint disasters that have not come, and convince you to bow down before a future that does not even belong to it. I have sat in quiet rooms where the loudest sound was the roar of what ifs in my own mind. What if they leave? What if I fail? What if I am exposed? What if I am not enough? Those questions came like waves, and I felt myself drowning in water that existed only in my thoughts. But when I reached for this psalm, when I heard that bold question, "Whom shall I fear?" it was as if the Spirit put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Look again. Who is really in control here?" Suddenly, I saw that fear had grown tall, only because I had fed it with my focus, my rehearsed anxieties, my constant rehearsals of defeat. This psalm does not pretend that enemies are imaginary. It simply reminds you that they are not ultimate. It shows you a God who is light, who is salvation, who is the strength of your life, so that even when armies encamp around your heart, you can say, "My confidence is not in their absence, but in his presence." I learned that courage is not the absence of shaking knees. Courage is the decision to move while they shake. There were days when I walked into rooms feeling like a small bird in a forest of predators. But I whispered under my breath, "The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?" And with that, something in my spine straightened. I did not become louder, but I became rooted. You, too, are invited into that same holy defiance. This psalm dares you to challenge the old agreements you made with fear, the agreement that says you will never speak up, never dream too big, never love too deeply because pain might come. It asks you gently, whom do you really fear? People who can wound your pride, or a God who holds your destiny? When you answer that question with your life, fear begins to shrink. You stop granting it the power to veto every decision. You stop letting it keep you from applying, from forgiving, from trying again, from standing tall even after humiliation. You begin to walk, not recklessly, but faithfully, knowing that your security is not in the predictability of your days, but in the character of your God. And as you echo that ancient question, whom shall I fear? You are not boasting in yourself. You are resting in the one who surrounds you. Little by little, your soul learns a new rhythm. Threats may come. Voices may rise, storms may gather, but you belong to a protector who has already seen the end from the beginning. Then, even with the wind howling and the night pressing close, you will find yourself standing, perhaps trembling, but still standing, and saying with quiet certainty, I will not be ruled by fear. I am guarded, and I am not alone. There is a line in this psalm that sings deep in my spirit. One thing have I desired, that will I seek after. In a world that demands 10,000 desires, it dares you to choose one holy obsession, the presence of God. When your heart learns to value his gaze above every compliment, his whisper above every crowd, you become anchored. You may still work, still love, still dream, but you are no longer desperate for applause. To seek his face is to build your identity, not on shifting opinions, but on a love that knew you before your first breath and will hold you beyond your last. I have lived long enough to know that people's opinions are like the wind. They blow warm today and cold tomorrow. They lift you up in the morning and forget your name by nightfall. I have felt the sting of being praised in one season and ignored in the next. And I learned the hard way that if you build your worth on human applause, you will always be under construction and never at rest. This psalm steps into that restless building site and says, lay down your bricks. There is another foundation. When I read, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, I do not hear a call to hide away from the world. I hear an invitation to carry his presence into every room I enter, to make my heart a sanctuary, even while I move through streets, offices, kitchens, and crowded trains. There was a time when I dressed myself in other people's expectations, wearing their approval like a fragile garment that could be ripped off by one harsh word, one cold glance, one forgotten invitation. But as I sat with this psalm, it began to undress me from that fragile fabric and clothe me in something heavier, something stronger, something woven from the truth of who God says I am. To desire one thing is not to abandon your responsibilities. It is to let that one thing, that presence, that closeness, become the fire in the center of your life. Then when people clap, you can smile and say thank you without becoming a slave to the sound. When they criticize, you can listen for any truth without letting it destroy your soul. When they do not see you, you do not disappear, because you know there is one who has never taken his eyes off you. I want you to imagine, just for a moment, what your life would feel like if you were no longer auditioning for love in every room. Imagine walking into your day knowing you are already chosen, already seen, already treasured by the God who wrote Psalm 27 through the trembling hands of a man who knew trouble and yet chose one thing. That kind of desire, that kind of seeking, gives you a quiet boldness. You start to say no to what pulls you away from Him and yes to what draws you closer, not because a preacher told you to, but because your own soul has tasted the sweetness of His nearness. And when the noise of many voices rises, some calling you forward, some pulling you back, you will find yourself turning inward and upward, listening for that singular, steady voice that has never lied to you. In that listening, in that longing, in that one holy obsession, you will discover a life that is not tossed and turned by the tides of approval, but rooted like a tree by living water in the unshakable presence of God. The psalm says He will hide you in His pavilion, set you high upon a rock in the very day of trouble. Not after the storm, but in the middle of it. I have seen trouble come without knocking, yet I have also felt an unseen shelter, a strength that did not come from my own spine. This key point is a promise. You may still hear the thunder, still see the waves, but you will find there is a place in God where panic cannot reach you. In that secret place, your soul learns that safety is not in the absence of danger. It is in the presence of the deliverer. I remember seasons when life felt like a house with too many doors and all of them flying open at once. Sickness in one room, betrayal in another, bills stacked like accusations on the kitchen table. My mind ran from door to door, trying to put out fires with bare hands, and still the smoke rose higher. It was then that this psalm whispered to me of a pavilion, a hidden place that did not deny the existence of flames, but refused to let them define my fate. To be hidden in Him is not to disappear from your responsibilities. It is to be covered in a peace that makes you handle them differently. Trouble may stand on your front porch and shout your name, but hidden in God, you no longer answer as a prisoner. You answer as a child who knows whose house this really is. When He sets you high upon a rock, He is not lifting you out of reality. He is lifting your perspective. From that higher ground, the same waves that once looked ready to swallow you whole now seem smaller, contained, limited by a shoreline He Himself has drawn. You see that the storm has boundaries, but your God does not. I have felt that lifting. I have sat in rooms where the report was not good, where the faces were long and the air was thick with fear, and yet there was a whisper in my spirit saying, "You are still in my hand." My body stayed in that room, but my soul stepped into the pavilion. My knees may have trembled, my voice may have cracked, but there was a quiet knowing underneath it. I am not standing here alone. This is what I want for you, dear heart. Not a life with no storms, but a life with an anchor. A life where your first instinct is not to run in circles, but to run into that secret place. To remember there is a rock beneath your feet that does not move when the market drops, when the doctor frowns, when the one you trusted walks away. In that place, your prayers change. You no longer beg like a stranger at a locked gate. You speak as one who has been invited inside. You say, "Hide me, Lord, until this calamity be overpast. And you find that even while the winds still howl, you can breathe, you can think, you can even sing. And when at last the storm begins to tire, when the thunder rolls away and the clouds loosen their grip on the sky, you will not only find that you survive, you will discover that something in you has been fortified. You will step out from that pavilion, still in the same world, but with a different walk, knowing in the marrow of your bones that true safety was never the quiet of the weather. It was always the nearness of your God. At the end of this psalm, a command rises like a drum beat. Wait on the Lord, be of good courage. Waiting is not a passive act. It is a royal stance. I have waited with tears on my face and questions in my throat. Yet I discovered that while I waited, something in me was being strengthened, straightened, fortified. This key point teaches you that delay is not denial, and silence is not abandonment. To wait on the Lord is to plant your feet in hope, to lift your head when others bow to despair, and to trust that the same God who began a good work in you is already walking toward you with the answer in his hands. I have known the ache of prayers that seemed to hang in the air, like unanswered letters, the kind you slip into a mailbox and never hear from again. I have sat in rooms where the clock mocked me, where the promise looked late and the pain looked early. And in those moments, every impatient part of my soul wanted to run ahead of God, to take matters into my own trembling hands. But this psalm would not let me. It stood in front of me like a gentle guardian and said, wait, not slump, not sulk, not surrender to bitterness. Wait. There is a difference, you see, between waiting as a victim of circumstance and waiting as a child of the King. Victim waits with empty eyes, convinced that nothing good is coming. A child waits with a quiet dignity, knowing that the one they trust has never broken his word. Waiting, in the language of this psalm, is like a seed in the dark earth. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening, yet under the soil, in the hidden places, roots are reaching. Life is forming, strength is gathering in silence. So it is with your soul when you wait on the Lord. You may not see immediate change in your circumstances, but something deep within you is being trained to trust what you cannot yet trace. Your muscles of faith are being exercised. Your vision is being corrected. Your identity is being detached from what you can touch and fastened to the one you cannot see. I have waited and watched as the same delay that once felt like punishment became my preparation. The doors that did not open on my schedule were not locked out of cruelty. They were guarded for my protection. The relationships that did not bloom when I wanted them to were not withheld to starve me of love. They were pruned so that when love did arrive, I would recognize its truth and not settle for its counterfeit. When the psalm says, "Be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thine heart," it does not promise that your surroundings will immediately change. It promises that you will. Your heart, that fragile, beating place where fears and hopes wrestle, will be strengthened. Courage will not fall on you like rain. It will rise in you like dawn. You will find yourself waking up on days when nothing outside seems different, yet something inside stands taller. You will notice that the voices which once terrified you now sound smaller, that the mountains that once paralyzed you now look climbable. And this change did not come in the rush of a miracle moment alone. It came in the steady, holy work of waiting. So, dear heart, do not despise the slow seasons, the unanswered questions, the long nights where heaven seems quiet. In those very stretches of silence, you are being shaped into someone who can carry the blessing without breaking under its weight. Stand in that royal stance. Lift your head, even with swollen eyes. Plant your feet, even with trembling knees. Whisper it if you must, but let your soul hear you say, I will wait on the Lord, and I will be of good courage. And as you do, you will find that the God you are waiting on has been with you all along, turning your waiting into a womb for strength, and your delay into the doorway of a life you could not have built by rushing ahead. My beloved, when I look back over the path we have walked together through Psalm 27, I see a trail of light. I see a God who stepped into our battlefield night and dared the darkness to stay. I see the trembling soul learning to ask, not what will I fear, but whom shall I fear? If the Lord himself stands beside me. I see a heart learning to desire one thing above all the glitter and noise of this world. The steady, holy presence of the one who never looks away. I see a child of God discovering that there is a pavilion in the middle of the storm, a hidden place where panic has no key, where tears may fall, but faith does not drown. And I see the slow, sacred strength that rises in those who wait, not as beggars at a locked gate, but as sons and daughters of a faithful king. If you let it, Psalm 27 will not just sit on the pages of your Bible, it will move into the rooms of your life. It will stand by your bed when fear visits at midnight. It will walk with you into hard conversations and uncertain tomorrows. It will remind you again and again that you are not a random wanderer on this earth. You are guided, you are guarded, you are great.